Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. What silver and gold stackers can learn from Palladium's record price. Let's explore! Yes, Palladium is one of those metals that has seen quite a bit of movement over the last year or so. As of the recording of this video, it has now reached new highs, over $3,000 an ounce. And as you know, on this channel, I like to cover all the metals, all the precious metals especially, but even some of the base metals as well. And I think there's some lessons that can be learned for gold and silver stackers from Palladium's record price. I think it helps us to understand the volatility or lack thereof in the marketplace, and maybe help to have a deeper understanding of why certain metals don't perform as well as we think they should. For instance, there's some in the community that think that gold, even though it's reached its record highs in terms of real price movement last year, they think it should be a lot higher than it is now, considering the times from which we live. Silver is even more frustrating because we've seen a constant silver squeeze on silver products that are out there, but yet the price does not seem to budge. We can't get it to shoot past $30 where we saw it last year after the original very much quick sell-off and running to the safety of cash last year in March at the beginning of the pandemic and the pandemonium that followed. But so what can we learn from gold and silver, this movement, compared to what Palladium has done? Well, let's see. Right now, what's going on with Palladium? Why is it up so high? Well, according to Daniel Gali, the Palladium is a market that's in a deeper deficit than many had expected earlier in the year. That's going to continue to fuel higher prices in the near term, which means that there is a massive shortage of palladium, and it's going to be needed for catalytic converters and the like to clean car exhaust fumes. And they've risen 20% this year so far. And there's a Reuters poll that returned a higher forecast for palladium after flooding at the biggest supplier, Russia's Nornickel, worsened the shortage. I covered that story on this channel. But it is something that is, supplies are extremely tight, and so it's something that's very volatile. And with all indications are that as things start to open back up again, as supply chains start to reconnect, we can see more demand for the products that need palladium to be utilized. And what you're seeing here before you is an instance of palladium that is in bullion form. And this time, in this case, bars and a round here. And these were bought when palladium was very, very low, literally hundreds of dollars, well below $500 for these products here. And now it's trading over $3,000. And so it is fascinating to see, but why is it? It's because palladium is only produced in several locations, mainly in Russia and the Siberia region, and then also in South Africa. And so when you have supplies that are tight, especially in areas where there are geopolitical uncertainties in those areas, and the metal being very rare and then high demand, that is a recipe for high prices. And we're starting to see platinum start to follow suit along with palladium, although still way behind, and still way behind gold as well. But still, it's something that we are seeing because palladium is the better catalyst for these gasoline engines. And there is quite a bit of demand on automobiles out there, and their prices are going up as well. And so with the cost of production going up, that means the metals and the materials behind them are probably going up as well. And palladium is a very rare precious metal. Some say that, platinum is up to about 15 to 20 times rarer than gold. And they say palladium is about 15 to 20 times rarer than platinum. So I think that tells us something. That tells us what we can learn from palladium in terms of silver and gold. Now, we know that gold is rare. Gold is a rare precious metal, but it is not so rare that it cannot be easily bought and traded, and it is obviously very much desired by not only many of us in this community and those who hold gold as a hedge against economic instability. It is also treasured by central banks, and it has very little, but it does have some industrial use. But the vast majority of gold is treasured, whereas palladium, the vast majority of palladium is utilized in industry. So therefore, what's driving its price upwards is a demand for it in the industrial sector. What's driving the price of gold up is demand for it in the investor sector, for lack of a better word, because I actually don't see gold as an investment. It's a hedge against economic instability. Gold as a safe haven. Not very many people out there would say that this kind of dull, shiny metal here is a safe haven. It is a speculative play. I call it a fringe precious metal. But it is exciting to see that it has broken records, just like rhodium has broken records, although rhodium has smashed some glass ceilings in its price structure as it is trading well above $27,000 as of the recording of this video. Rhodium is in a world of its own, and it's very difficult to kind of tie down. But with palladium, it's a market that is more easily digestible and analyzed. It is really more simple because it is mostly considered this industrial metal. So that is the lesson we can learn in comparison to gold, is that gold is more a metal that is sought for as a safe haven, and palladium is a metal that is sought for as an industrialized asset, as a commodity. But it does come in bullion form, but it's not as liquid, and it is not as sought after. Even with the prices where they are now, not many people are buying palladium. It's kind of off the radar. So obviously, it's been talked about in some in precious metal circles because it's broken records as of late, but that's about it. It's kind of a novelty in that regard. And palladium certainly has the potential to move much higher, but if you take this and sell it, who's going to give you? Who's going to want this? Who's going to have a demand for this metal? Especially when there's a couple $100 difference between the bid and spot price for this metal, and that is part of the problem. Liquidity in bullion form is a little tougher to come by. Rhodium is an even more narrow market. In fact, I did a video about how I could, sell the metal, and there's very few places that will buy it. You will find more options for palladium out there, but not quite as many. Gold is much more liquid. Everybody wants gold. Now let's talk about silver in relation to palladium. Silver is the hybrid metal. It has a duality to it. It is both a precious metal that is accumulated as a hedge against economic instability, as a safe haven, but it is more seen as a commodity, as an industrialized metal. So there's a push and pull on the prices in that regard. It is also plentiful. There's a lot of silver out there to be utilized in industry. In fact, I've recently posted a video talking about some of that supply and the silver shortage and how they relate in that regard. And to recap, that is essentially a silver shortage of product in form of bullion, coins, and rounds over a shortened period of time. And there's a supply surplus because a lot of that metal has kind of stopped being utilized for industrial uses after the slowdown and the shuttering of different agencies and organizations and industries that utilize that silver. So they kind of had nowhere to go, so it kind of stuck there. But nonetheless, silver's market is a bit more complex in that regard, as you have the push and pull between the industrial sector and the investment sector. And usually the industrial sector will win because well more than half, not a whole lot more, but up to 55 to 60% at the most of silver supply is utilized in industry. And so that is something to take into account. And silver is mined mainly as a byproduct of other metals. Now, palladium is mined in very few places, and it is a byproduct or a primary product in those areas. But it almost doesn't matter if it's a byproduct or what have you, because it's very rare and hard to come by in some of these areas. There's really only two places. Silver is everywhere and can be mined as a byproduct of copper, nickel, lead, zinc, etc. And so therefore, as the demand increases for those other metals and they pull more of those other metals out of the ground, likely you will see silver follow suit. Yea, though, there are less and less primary silver producers out there. And we've reached peak silver in terms of primary silver mining. But that kind of really doesn't change the calculus, other than the fact that it is even more sought after as an industrialized metal, given that the primary silver producers will probably proportion a better part of their silver for the investment side. In other words, the hedge side, because they can probably profit from that greater than on the industrial sector. So those are some of the things that we can learn as gold and silver stackers about palladium's record price. And it gives you an insight as to why gold and silver have not broken those records. Even adjusted for inflation, gold really has not reached its all-time high. And it still has quite a ways to do, well above $2,000 to get to that point. In fact, some say between $2,200 and $2,300 in order to reach its all-time high adjusted for inflation. Silver is way far away from reaching that point. So I think there's a ways to go because of the dynamics of the market out there. But gold and silver, the lessons and what they can learn, what we can learn as silver stackers for palladium's record price, I think will hold us well and maybe give us a little bit more patience in terms of the spot price of gold and silver. And even with premiums on gold and silver, they still can't hold a candle to what palladium has done on a steady basis, really. And when you think about it, over the course of quite a number of months and even the past few years here. So it's about being patient. It's about understanding the markets a little bit here and adjusting accordingly. I would encourage you, as I have a little bit of palladium here as sort of a little bit of diversification to my stack, it may not be a bad idea to diversify. I'm not necessarily saying you should go out and buy palladium, but platinum I've been pretty bullish on, and that's really shown a great return over the last year, especially. And if you're a silver stacker, I would encourage you to hold a little bit of gold as well. And if you're purely a gold stacker, I don't think it's a bad idea to have a little bit of silver in your stack too to diversify. And that's kind of what it's about. Now, I'm giving this advice to you merely as just an individual here in this space, but I can diversify mainly because I just enjoy the look. And as a collector, these metals have a different look and different attributes that I find appealing to them. And so, therefore, it's no problem for me to diversify. I think they're cool looking. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with liking what you buy. And there's nothing wrong with buying what you like. It just so happens that when you buy precious metals, when you buy what you like, and when you like what you buy, you're protected by the intrinsic value of the metal contained therein, which is profoundly important. And that means that you are preserving your wealth in most of these cases, except for maybe in palladium. Right now, if you buy palladium at near $3,000 an ounce, it's a pure speculative play because you never know. Next week, next month, it could drop a few $100s just like that. But that's still not, that's a fairly small percentage if it were to drop that much. But it's a pretty big chunk of change for it to drop. You know, usually as assets get higher in price, it's less likely that they're going to just keep climbing at that rate or go high. You know, typically if they climb up especially fast, they typically will fall just as fast too, to recover or to correct themselves. So keep that in mind too. As investors out there, we have to be sage investors, and we've got to be careful and calculated and understand what we buy, as well as like what we buy, and as well as buying what we like. Hope you found this video insightful. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, please share, comment, and subscribe. Stillwater Palladium. Look at that. Lewis and Clark. You'll never guess what's on the back of this. Who wants to take a guess? 3, 2, 1. Boom, shalaka, the old buffalo.